Hello and welcome to the podcast for Real Life Heroines with Susanna Liller. Join us bi-weekly as alongside of you, we work toward answering the call, knowing that stepping into our destiny always involves going into the unknown and exploring new landscapes. This show talks about those new landscapes, what it took to get there, and the real challenges that take place for most of us along the journey. Heroines don't stay in their comfort zone. They follow their inner guidance to grow and evolve. From the School for Real Life Heroines, your host, Susanna Liller.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast for Real Life Heroines, where I, Susanna Liller, get to talk to, interview real life heroines on their heroine's journey and have them share their stories of how they answered a call to go on the journey with you. And today I have Elvira DiBrigit, all the way from beautiful, sunny Hawaii to talk to. Welcome, Elvira.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. And let me just say a bit about you before I start asking you questions and kicking off our conversation. And for you, I think the day is just beginning, correct?
Right. Yes.
Yes. And here in Maine, we're in the middle of the afternoon. So, okay, so here's how Elvira introduces herself. I am a parent mentor, helping moms who feel, and see if this resonates at all for any of you moms, helping moms who feel anxious, stressed, or unprepared to face the challenges as their daughters transition through puberty and adolescence. I help them build a relationship of trust and empowerment around the shared exploration of women's cycles and the heroine's journey. So I bet a lot of you are thinking, holy smokes, I wish when my daughter was 13 or 14, Elvira was around. But Elvira, because so much, as you know, of what I do is about the heroine's journey. What brought you to put your stuff, wrap your stuff within that framework as well?
Yeah, well, I was definitely raised around my mom and books that were all about the collective unconscious and mythology. So I got an early start, and then through my own explorations, I just realized more and more about the heroine's journey and how important it was to me to be able to view my life in that way. So,
right. Did you go through any of the soul searching as I did? Because when you read all that literature, Joseph Campbell, Jung, everybody, it's the hero's journey. And you have to consciously now talk about it as the heroine's journey. And did you have any trouble going there when you decided to name your work about the heroine's journey?
Well, when I decided to name my work in that way, the biggest issue was that how to say that word and would people understand it, and my husband always makes jokes about, oh, you're doing recovery work.
Exactly. I got the same thing. And that was I'd say heroine with an E on the end. And then I thought, we need to just reclaim that word. And I actually looked it up.
Exactly.
And heroine is an empowered woman, initially a demigoddess. And that word was around before the drug, I think it was the Bayer company named, you did the same reason. Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why the Bayer company named the drug that was because it gave people heroic feelings. And that's so not,
Oh, I didn't
I,
realize that part. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yes, that's a similar thought
yeah.
system that I went through too. I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to educate people that this is a word that we can use, heroine or heroin. It's but but yeah, my mother had always introduced me to like goddess culture and matriarchal or matrifocal. I just learned that word. um, so it wasn't that much of a leap for me to take like what I had knew about the hero's journey and explore the heroine's journey. Um, but it just made so much sense when I connected in with it. I was like, oh yeah, I mean, we have a different journey, and the part also about just yeah, trying to go the masculine journey and then realizing at some point in your life that that's not quite your journey. Like that is part of our modern day heroine's journey.
Right. That's so true. And I think about my experience when I entered the workforce, and it was all about kind of being like the leaders, the male leaders, instead of embracing my own style and remembering my boss telling me I was too nice. And I was thinking, yeah, but it's working for me. But, in that place, it wasn't the way you got ahead. You didn't get ahead by being nice. So talk about, if you would, because I'm always curious to find out what rang the bell, what gave you the call to start doing the work you're doing. And maybe first I should ask you to explain the work you're doing now with women and their daughters and in the groups. And then if you could explain how you got there, what was your call?
Okay, well, what I'm doing now, yeah, it's definitely been different iterations. And so now I'm working with mothers like you introduced me with, mothers who have preteen or teen daughters, and they're wondering like, oh, how can I handle this better than my mother? And how can I really help my daughter to be an empowered and safe person in this world and not be afraid and to walk a different way in the world. Just like we were saying, like, yeah, can you be nice but still strong? Can you bring these feminine qualities into the world? Because that's so much of what our world is needing.
Mhm.
So the last few years, I've been working with parents and helping them to understand what their daughters and their sons too, what their children are going through in the preteen years. And from a physical perspective, talking about hormones and the brain development that's happening, but also the inner experience that's happening, because I studied as a Waldorf teacher. And so Rudolf Steiner has, his own pedagogy, a whole, different way of looking at the human being and how we come into like a different spiritual births in our, in ourself. So I, share that with the parents, and I've also studied some positive psychology. So I integrate some of that with activities and exercises. And I have mother-daughter circles that I also lead once I'm working with the parents, and then usually the next step is to work together with the mother and the daughter.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
and I forgot to mention in all that that what I realized as I started doing this work is that because I was focusing on puberty, and for girls having their first period, menarche, that is, such a pivotal time. And so I have really integrated learning about our whole menstrual cycle into my work with mothers and daughters so that they can, I think that's a great time for mothers to, be there in a different way for their daughters. And it's like leading up to that time. And then it's not just about like a ceremony for their first period, which is more and more common these days. It's also just about really using that time for more and more conversations and looking at the whole cycle, not just your period and not just PMS, but how our hormones affect our whole month. And it really is a cycle that a spiral we keep going through.
Right.
So understanding it, yeah, it really helps.
That reminds me of the book that I didn't even know about, called The Women's Wheel of Life, that you introduced me to, right? And what's so interesting to me about this book by Elizabeth Davis and Carol Leonard,
who are midwives.
but it's always been maiden, mother, and crone, and those are kind of the archetypes of women's growth. And I always thought, well, I'm still a mother, but I'm a grandmother, but I'm not quite a crone. And they have a whole added, and you can say this before I even find it. What's the other one between mother and crone? They've added.
Yeah, there's different names for it. The MAGA or the Amazon. Let me see. I have it here too.
Up too. The maiden, the mother, the matriarch. Yes?
Matriarch, that's right.
Right.
And then the crown. Yeah.
I can identify with, and of course this book has, to help you figure out where you are. And of course it says you can move around. But it's just so interesting. And I really appreciate your introducing it to me.
Yes, yeah, that's something that I share in my courses to have. It's so helpful to just realize that women, we have this wheel of life, or you can look at different archetypes, but just also to know that we can be flexible in them. And that's what I love about that book. It really talks about that we have this transformer ability. So even our daughters can be like a wise woman for their friends, and they can be, it doesn't just depend on age.
You're not just stuck in one of those. Well, so then, Elvira, explain like kind of where you were in ordinary life in the heroine's journey before you get a call, right? So where were you before you got this call to start working with women and daughters and mothers and children in this way? What was how did that?
Yeah, well, I can see so many layers in my life that were leading me here, but yeah, the kind of big one was I had become a teacher. I had studied Waldorf, and I was most of my career working as a homeschool teacher and coach. I homeschooled my own children because we lived too far away to get to school. And then I had, really built my life around being a homeschool coach, and in this certain one community in California. Right. And and we had lived there for, I don't know, about 17 years. And we had a whole homestead and olive production. We made olive oil. And so we were really grounded there in this valley, and had raised my older children there. I have 2 children who are now in their later 20s, and I have a 14-year-old son still at home. So there came a time where, I thought my life was going in this one direction. I'm just going to stay here and be like the homeschool matriarch. And then it all came crashing down. Yeah. My husband's health was a big factor, and he hurt his back, and then he lost his job. And at the same time, the homeschool community that I was involved with just, I would say it fell apart, but it really was changed. And there was another like young male teacher who came on the scene and just kind of like swooped in and created this like private school. And
Mm.
so all of a sudden we were like, we don't have anything really keeping us here, and we were not happy, and our son wasn't too happy either. He didn't have like a playmate of his age right there, so we were driving. So we started thinking, well, maybe we should move. Maybe we should move closer into the city so that our son can be closer to these friends that we were driving an hour to see. And then we thought, well, if we're going to move, we should probably move where we really want to be, which was Hawaii.
Wow.
We had been, yeah. So that was one big,
Uh,
one big step.
and Elvira, I just want to point out that it does often happen that way, that things just seem to fall apart and collapse, and some people think, oh, this is horrible, and it can initially feel horrible, but then you look back at it and you say, thank God it happened, because look what it made me do. So was that kind of how it unfolded?
Exactly. Yeah, there was like a year and a half or two of it was really gray. And yeah, my husband was really depressed, and I was trying to keep it together, but we were just like, what are we going to do? And just upset with the way things were going.
Mm.
And so it was a really big decision and we did it slowly. We were like, well, let's go to Hawaii for a year, and we just put everything in storage and rented our house, and went to see how it would be. But as soon as we got there, we felt at home, and this is really when I got this call. I would stretch and meditate every morning, and I felt so blessed to have this like new start in this beautiful place. And it had worked out just so smoothly with finding a place to live and getting our son into a school that we were so happy about. So all those things combined, I was in this really grateful space. And then I just felt this calling. I remember one morning being out in the yard and just getting this really strong calling, like, I want to do something to share what I have, what I've learned through my life. Like, there's been so many great mentors in my life. And just being able to get through that rough patch and see a clearing, and say, oh, wow, I want to bring other people here. That was the feeling that I had. And I started, looking around with how can I do that? But
right.
yeah.
And so it was a feeling. You just strongly began to, that was your intuition? Is that how you would?
Yeah, I would say it was intuition. It was also feeling the land here, and Pele, the goddess. I just was like imagining this connection with her. And it was definitely a strong feeling that just was saying, now is the time, and you have things you need to share.
So when people are on that threshold, these are some of the things that I hear are, but the threshold guardians were voicing their concerns about danger, and they get fearful. And I'm wondering, was it hard for you to walk in the direction of your call, or were you getting you don't know enough, you're not old enough, young enough, whatever, all of that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. And I just learned a new word for that, the inner saboteurs. That was a strong one. It was mostly inside that I was getting that message, but the outer voices, I think we had already kind of conquered that from moving to Hawaii, because it was like there were definitely people saying, what are you can't just move to Hawaii, and so taking that step, we had already kind of, yeah, crossed over a big threshold.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely was feeling like, well, how am I going to share? What am I going to share? And I immediately started feeling like, oh, I need to practice my storytelling skills. And yeah,
But
it was definitely,
you knew inside that was your calling, what you needed to do. No question.
yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. And I still today, sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I don't have time for this.
Absolutely.
But I still feel like it's, yeah.
Right. Right. And we get many calls, right, in our lives, and we follow them and we go through a journey related to that call, and then we are done, and then something else comes up. So yeah, so I'm sure people are wondering, where is she in Hawaii exactly?
Oh, yeah. So I'm on the Big Island, and we bought another farm, and it's like the same size as the one in California, just 3 acres. But we're on the Kona side. We're actually in Kealakekua, which means pathway of the gods.
Mm, nice. Wonderful. Yeah. And also when you were talking about how the move just kind of unfolded smoothly, and things kind of fell into place, to me too, that's a sign that, yeah, this is the way you're supposed to go, and I think if we run into
Right.
roadblocks, that can tell us, maybe this is not the right direction. So yeah. Huh. Well, so then I have some questions. And so I know you went to, got certified as a coach in Marianne Williams's course, which I think is called
Yeah.
Miracle Coaching.
Miracle-minded coaching,
Uh,
right.
Can you share a little bit about, I remember what you said to me.
Yeah.
You said you made a very strong, um, profoundly changed your life, is what you said.
Oh,
So how was that?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it goes back to actually when I was a teenager and I was searching, and I had a good relationship with my mother, but still I didn't want to share everything with her because she was my mother, and she was, maybe took things too personally, or it was like a shared responsibility or something. And I was trying to, individuate and go on my own. So I happened to meet this woman who became an amazing mentor to me. Her name is Rosa Maria Wynn. She has since passed on, but she was the first translator of A Course in Miracles. And so she introduced me to that book back then when I was 16, 17.
I have a copy of just showing people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that that book is just, yeah. When I first started reading it, I was like, oh, this is answering so many of my questions. I was a very thoughtful teenager who was like, why are we here? What's the purpose of life?
Mm.
So that book really helped me a lot. And then I had kind of put it to the side for quite a few years after my first marriage. And then during the early months of the pandemic, I saw that Marianne Williamson was offering this course, and I would just, the timing of when I saw it was like a Facebook ad. It just seems like, wow. It was like a lightning bolt of like, this is for me. I have to do this. And so another call.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I was one of the first coaches that she trained in the cohort of 25. So we started out the first month with her in turned out to be a 1.5 year long program. And it was focused on the principles of A Course in Miracles, but it wasn't exclusively like she talked more just in generalities about life and how to help people, and that, regular therapy and even coaching is a lot of times just not really able to take the next step of really helping people to see like through their own ego and really directing people to get an inner sense for themselves of their inner purpose. And I think one of the biggest things that she talked about was developing spiritual musculature, which through my time with her, definitely I got more focused on meditation and also just asking within for little things during the day. So just developing that intuition. That's really like inner knowing.
I think spiritual musculature. What I would assume that is connecting with spirit, whatever you want to call spirit, on a regular basis and sort of keeping that frequency open.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And training your mind, not to go along with the ego stories, and to come back and and realize that you're creating your own perceptions of what's going on. So that's one of my favorite lines in the Course in Miracles is just don't believe everything you think.
So this is, I get asked this a lot. So how, and I get asked this about the call, but also about messages and guidance that we might get. How can you best distinguish between a spiritual connection message and the ego? And do you have, what do you tell people?
Yeah. And I think that my mentor, Rosa Maria, was so good at helping me figure that out when I was younger, that she said, peace is the one and only goal. It's the ultimate goal. It's the most important thing. Whatever thing that you're thinking you need or want, it really behind that should be the goal of peace. And so, like with that decision of should I do this training with Marianne Williamson, which was a little outside my budget range normally, I really sat with it and thought, well, how does it feel inside if I do this training? How does it feel if I don't do this training? And I just really, felt like, I just feel like peaceful. And this is, no matter what, there will be something. I knew there was something I would get from it that would be everlasting, and something couldn't easily replace.
So can I move our conversation back to your work with mothers and daughters? And I'm wondering, what do you hear the most as, you have a great, in your website, a great way that you introduce the questions. You say, are you worried because you know that teenage anxiety and depression rates are on the rise? Are you afraid of your daughter entering the over-sexualized world we live in? All these questions. What do you encounter the most from the mothers? And then I'll ask you what about the daughters? But from the mothers, what are they most concerned about?
Mm. I think the biggest concern that I hear is that my daughter isn't as open with me anymore. There can be different levels of that. Um, some of it is that, my daughter is just in her room all the time now, and she, or yeah, she's just not as forthcoming in our conversations.
That's such a close. I have a daughter who's 40, and she has a daughter who's 11. And yeah, that's such a bond when they're young and you're so close. But individuation is necessary, so it has to happen. I also note in your website you talk about an aha you had when you were having a trying time with your daughter. And do you know what I'm talking about? The aha.
Yeah, I think I remember what's on there.
Did you forget?
Yeah. There were a few, man. There's one where I think it's this one where she just said, after we had gotten in this, argument and upset, and I was then trying to repair and because she wasn't talking to me, which was really unusual. And she came to me, and we had both studied nonviolent communication together when she was younger. And so then I was, trying to use those techniques and saying, well, I'm empathizing with you. I understand how you might have seen this. And, these were my needs. And she just said, how come you just only use this stuff when there's a problem?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh gosh, is that true? Yeah, it was like an aha moment of, oh yeah, I can use these communication ways more. And I guess I'm not, yeah, there were definitely ways that I was being with her that were not, like giving the answers too quickly, trying to solve the problems, which is exactly what I said about my mom, not wanting to tell her things because she was just always trying to tell me the answer.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's so, many examples spring to my head. I mean, as a mediator, I was trained in how you communicate and not to jump to what the answer is. And I remember she was deciding what color to paint her room, and she was going to be able to paint it. And I remember going in there and her saying, I know what I want. I know what I want to color. I want to paint it black. And my immediate was, oh, no way. Can you paint your bedroom black? And I had learned, so that I went, so, okay, tell me what it is you like about that you would want. I mean, how would that make your room? Not being critical, but trying to understand where she was coming from. So, yeah. So what you said too in your website, which is there's so much in there that's helpful, and you have so many resources. And you said that it's a growing learning experience for the mother just as much as it is for the child. Right? We learn so much. We learn so much from our children as we're parenting. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I say there, it's like a spiritual initiation. I really see parenting as a series of spiritual initiations. I mean, when I first had my babies, I remember that the self-sacrifice and denial of myself, my own needs during that time, I recognized that's like similar to what the yogis were doing, by going, I would just think of this image of like, in the Himalayas going to a cave and not eating and,
Right.
not being able to get up when you really want to because someone's sleeping on your chest, these kind of things. It's like, yeah, you can
Yeah.
either be extremely frustrated or you can, learn from that.
Yeah, definitely. So what about the preteens and the early teens that come? What seems to be their biggest as you get into discussions? What are they talking about?
Oh, like when I have girl circles. Yeah, it's definitely a little harder to get them talking sometimes, but when there's a group of girls and I'm just kind of facilitating the discussion, asking some questions and letting them talk, um, yeah, there may a lot of it is about their peer interactions, and um, their own feelings of insecurity among their peers. That's the big one that comes up.
Yeah, right. So you know that I work mostly with adult women, professional women who still, a lot of them have insecurities, and don't trust their inner wisdom necessarily. So what can we do better with our daughters, or women in general, that to help them realize that to me, it's about the heroine's journey is about helping women understand they are heroines of their own story, and that's an amazing thing. I mean, they are so much more than they realize they are. So how, Elvira, can we
Exactly.
help them understand that?
Yes, that is the goal. I love how you put that. And yeah, I feel like we can help them to know that it's normal, that everyone is going through this, because that's the first step, I think, when you're a teenager, is that you're not quite realizing yet that everyone is going through these similar feelings of insecurity. I mean, it might be over a different issue. Different people have different things that make them feel insecure, but yeah, we all have things to overcome, and that we all have different strengths. I really love working with teenagers on their different character strengths and different ways to look at personality profiles, and giving them a different view on themselves in that way. And I also love helping the moms to do that and shifting the focus that way, of really seeing how people are using their strengths, even sometimes when you don't think they are,
Right. Or they don't see them as strengths. They don't realize that they have that, and maybe other people don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
that's a big part of it. And also, we were talking before about archetypes, and I think it's important to help our girls realize that there are these different archetypes, and that we can experience different ones, and we don't have to get locked into any certain one. Because I feel like, yeah, when you're first separating, individuating, finding yourself, that's a common thing, is that you might lock onto one thing and think, okay, well, this is who I have to be.
Right.
And so it's important to know that, especially in those younger years, that's a time for exploration. And yeah, go ahead and try on these different ways of being and explore. And that also goes into the study of menstrual cycles, because as women, we are cyclical beings. We are going to feel differently day to day, and that's normal, totally normal. So not to beat ourselves up. I think the human condition, it's very much thinking that things are gonna just last. Like when you're in a funky mood, you're feeling like this might last forever. What am I gonna do? that's like a normal, bias that we have. And so just recognizing, oh, okay, this is not necessarily going to last forever. And yeah.
Yeah. And it when you were talking about the teenagers getting stuck perhaps in, oh, this is the way I'm going to be, I would say also the other end of that, when you're 60 and older or 55 and older, you still can be exploring and changing and trying this and trying that. And in other words, don't get stuck thinking, oh, I'm a grandmother, so this means I can't do that anymore, and I can't do that anymore. And we can still keep trying, exploring, living, walking the
Yeah.
heroine's journey, listening for calls. Yeah, because we're going to keep
Yeah,
getting them.
exactly.
Yeah, until this wonderful friend who has passed away, and she was 95 when she passed away. And we would talk about the heroine's journey, and she would say, I'm getting ready for another one. And she meant dying, that's
Mm,
crossing like kind of the ultimate threshold at the end of life.
yeah.
And she was very interested, what will it be like? And in other words, I can't wait to see. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I do feel like all the calls that we get in life are preparing us maybe for that bigger call and threshold to go,
Right.
yeah, beyond this life. It's like we're learning things so that we can take them with us.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that brings up another point, that we get all these calls, and when I look back, I think each call sort of prepared me for the next one.
Mm.
That's how you collect your wisdom.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's
Well,
fascinating.
this is also reminding me of the truth of how we can be healing our ancestors' issues, and that also where, of course, our healing helps the next generation, but that there's, I love to talk with the girls also about how the eggs of their children were in them as they were embryo inside their mother. So you see, I have these nesting dolls up on my wall. It's like
Right.
we're all connected. And that
Right.
was another thing that Marianne Williamson really helped me to remember, is that all minds are joined. She would always say that. And it's so true. Like, you can know what's going on with someone if you're just a little bit aware.
Right. And I would say, and joined minds, but also with nature.
Mm,
Our connection there.
yes.
And I bet you, I'm thinking that part of the draw for you for Hawaii was the nature that you find there. And
Yes.
yeah. Huh. Well, just let me look and make sure I've asked the big ones. Um, and I think that I have. Is there anything that you and I talked about that I haven't mentioned and asked you to talk about that you can think?
Mm.
I'm looking at my notes as
Yeah, I know. There just feels like there's so many places we could go.
good. And I know we're getting near our ending time. I guess the thing I have here, lifting the taboo. I mean, so much of what you're doing in encouraging these conversations is lifting the taboos of, oh, you don't talk about getting your period, and you don't talk about whatever, you're
Yeah.
yeah, which is so good.
Yeah, it's really amazing that, and it's just still so new as women are more and more willing to talk about it with each other, and also think about how our cyclical nature can be an important thing to bring out into the world, that our the masculine way of doing things, where it's like you have to be on it with the same energy every day, that is actually not healthy. It's not healthy for men either, although they are more on like a solar rhythm. But they need downtime, and recognizing that and having it not be like a weakness is still a tricky thing that I think our culture is still dealing with. Like sometimes when I talk about it with women, they're like, yeah, but our mothers fought so hard to have it be, we don't want to be stigmatized by like, oh, you're going to have your period and not be able to handle this job or whatever. But it's actually, the world can be molded to work with those cyclical natures, and I think that's more sustainable, and I think that could be a big answer to our future sustainability.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to stop asking questions. We'll have to do this again. Let me just ask you, as people are listening and learning so much from what you have to say, Elvira, what do you want to make sure they hear from you? Like, if they don't remember anything else from our conversation, you'd like them to remember what?
Yeah, that our willingness is really everything, and trying again, like when we're talking about the heroine's journey, there's so many potholes and boulders we have to cross, and so we every day just have to try again, be willing to center ourselves, and follow our calling.
Wow. One foot after the other, one step after the other. And it's hard, but we're all going through the same thing. And yeah, wonderful. Well, I just want to mention, so your well, if you could mention, so your website is find you.
My website is heroinejourneyguide.com.
Okay.
And you can also find me on Instagram as the Puberty Doula. And I am putting together some free new moon mother circles, and so you can look for that in the future. And I also have a PDF on communication with your daughters for free on my website.
This is such needed and such good stuff. And I'm assuming your circles are in person in Hawaii, but also maybe on Zoom too, or is it all on
Oh,
Zoom?
yes, I should say that's right. I do have a little in-person group in Hawaii, but I am talking about online. Yeah, I'm going to offer them through I have like a private Facebook group, but you can still find out about them on Instagram, and it's just online circle, which is an amazing ability that we have to reach people around the world. Yeah.
Definitely. And, when you talked about what you were able to do during the pandemic, for me too, it's when I created my online course. The pandemic, as difficult as it was and hard for people and devastating for some people, was also that we talk about the downtime. It was great downtime for our creativity. So, well, Elvira, I have loved our conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, likewise, Susanna. It's so great to just have these conversations.
Yeah. And of course, when you love something like the archetype of the heroine's journey and you find somebody else that resonates with it, it's even better. So great that I found you, even though you were a long way away in Hawaii. So,
and thank you so much for letting me use the map. That was one of our first connections. I remember asking you if I could use the map, and I did play it like a game board with some girls and girl circles, and it was really helpful and fun.
someday, I think you mentioned this, someday it'd be so much fun to really put that and make it into a game for more.
Yeah.
All right, future project between us, maybe.
That sounds great.
So I want to thank everybody who joined us today and listened to this podcast. And I hope that you'll keep tuning in. There'll be another one with another real life heroine. So there's many real life heroines. So we'll be doing this for quite a while. Thank you and see you the next time.
You've been listening to the podcast for Real Life Heroines with Susanna Liller. Thank you for joining us. If you would like to connect with Susanna outside of the show, please do. You can email susanna@susannaliller.com and visit the website at susannaliller.com. Let's get social. Instagram @Susanna Liller, Facebook Susanna Liller, author, speaker, and coach. Don't forget to subscribe to the show for easy access to our next episode. And a like and review would be very helpful. Until next time, remember to follow your inner guidance to grow and evolve.